What is it? Happy Thursday, everybody. Josh here on the wrong lead. Another episode of Drank and Champagne. I am joined, as always, by Mr. Andrew Champagne. Andrew, it's been a while. We're a little rusty. I'm a little rusty. You've still been, I know you've still been doing Hong Kong and other content stuff. We've taken a slight little break, just with the busy people traveling and things like that. But how you been, man?
First of all, Happy New Year, Josh. I don't know if this is too late to wish you and our listeners a Happy New Year. We have to consult the Larry David handbook for that one, I think. But Happy New Year to all of you out there. We really appreciate you sticking around, and hopefully 2025 is a very good year for everybody out there. Have to tell you, my mind's in about 10 different places at the moment. You'd have to be living under a rock to not see the news coming out of Southern California with the fires. The Eaton fire, which is near a suburb of LA called Altadena, is a couple miles away from where I lived for 2.5 years. I lived just below the 210 freeway in Pasadena, not far from where the Rose Bowl parade turns off. And there's talk of that area too, potentially needing to evacuate. If you're down there, please be safe. Know that there are a lot of good people sending a lot of good thoughts and prayers your way. By contrast, if you're using this as an example to score political points, here's the first one of the year, Josh. You ready? Fuck right off.
Hmm.
It's absolutely dreadful down there. Some of the images are just devastating and very painful to see. A number of the spots that, say, CNN has been reporting from are spots I know pretty well. There's a fantastic ice cream place that is right across the street from the Jewish temple that burned down. So I know that area very, very well. If you're down there, please stay safe. If they say evacuate, leave. It's this stuff is no joke. The winds that are down there in Southern California right now, gusts of about 80 miles an hour. Just my heart breaks for everybody that's losing something, or in some cases, everything, because of what can be determined an act of God. It's absolutely insane, the stuff that's out there. And I wish we could start on a happier note. We like having fun on this show. But if you're down there, if you're suffering, know that we're thinking about you.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I have a friend, another friend. I think he lives just outside San Jose or Oakland. Maybe it's Oakland actually. He lives just outside Oakland, and he says that even by him, the winds,
Yeah.
they're intense, and so he's like I couldn't imagine. He's like, luckily we've got a ton of rain, it's wet, like we're not at the same risk, but yeah, if that stuff was going on with the wind, like it would be a nightmare here as well.
Yeah,
So,
just
um,
absolutely bonkers. I mean, it's nuts. And I saw today that it was nearing Altadena, and having lived down there, my thought was, okay, it's up in the mountains. It's not going to be anywhere close to anybody. That's usually the way this stuff works. I worked at Santa Anita once, and driving to Arcadia, there was a fire that was in the San Gabriel Mountains, and it looked like a scene from Apocalypse Now. Nobody was in any danger. Then you see the stuff that comes out, and it's just, this is as low as the fires from those mountain ranges have gotten, and it's going to wind up displacing a lot of people and doing a lot of damage. So yeah, just it's heartbreaking to see that stuff, man.
yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, it's been an interesting couple of weeks. And now, we I guess kind of turning a little bit closer back to racing.
Yeah,
Obviously there was, um, obviously Santa Anita is just on the other side of the freeway where the fires are kind of happening, and luckily it seems like that freeway is acting almost like a barrier right now. But I know, thoughts to anybody who's
yeah,
out there as well. Obviously workers that are over there and taking care of the horses and things. So, but it's not just like there. Obviously, we have the crazy fires and stuff. I mean, we have crazy weather everywhere. Once again, we got cancellations left and right. We have Oak Lawn's already canceled, I think, for the entire weekend.
Yep.
Turfway's canceled, I believe, or Turfway canceled Wednesday. We're recording this on Wednesday night, and they've already canceled Thursday night. There's a chance that maybe Friday gets canceled, but I don't know if anything has changed there. Uh, Aqueduct is already canceled a day or two, I think, because of high winds. So yeah, weather everywhere is just kind of going nuts. I was actually, not to get too much onto the weather talk, but a little a couple weeks ago, I was talking about how mild our winter so far here in Chicago had been. When I went to Vegas in the middle of or early December, I left and it was like 40s when I left. And when I landed in Vegas, it was like 50 or 60, but it didn't really feel all that like much warmer. And at night, it got just as cold there as it was here. Like it was really weird. And having a very mild winter. And yeah, things like in the last like week or two, temperatures have dropped. Things have gotten pretty frigid over here. So.
Yeah, when I flew home for the quote unquote Christmas weekend that I had, we do Christmas a weekend early in my family just because that's when everybody can do it and everybody can get into one spot. The Sunday night that I was home in Albany, New York, it dipped down to -4. Yeah, California guy here for the last 11 years. That was a shock to the system. Flew out of Albany the next day. It was 7 degrees above zero. Landed in San Francisco. It was 51 degrees. All of the Bay Area people were talking about, it's freezing. It's freezing. And I'm like, this is wonderful. This is incredible. I have a new appreciation for this. So that'll carry with me for a little while. But yeah, I got to tell you, I miss a number of things about the East Coast. I miss the sane parts of my family. I miss readily available good pizza. The snow and the cold weather, not so much.
Well, we're gonna get our focus back to racing. Well, before we do that, I do want to make mention. So our it happened again, Andrew, for like the third year in a row that I've planned a trip to try and go to Vegas for March Madness. Things have changed.
Of course.
So if it's not NHC, if it's not my job possibly going on strike, if it's not NHC again, I think this time it just seems like it's just darn too expensive.
Yep.
And you know myself and my buddy Gary had booked ready to go months ago, and we both got comp rooms and at Park MGM. So like we were gonna have a nice little setup, nice base of operations. I think Park MGM's I'm an MGM person, but Park MGM is nice and central, non-smoking, tons of good food, tons of easy to get to everywhere. Um, and Caleb was basically the one guy confirmed that he was going to come. And then we have about three or four other buddies who were kind of, on the fence whether or not they were gonna come or not. Um, and Caleb looked to book maybe about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and he had looked maybe about 6 weeks ago. So maybe about 2 weeks before that. The prices in those 2 weeks jumped. I think he said somewhere between $150 to $200 a night. He wasn't getting comp offers because he had kind of burned a lot of his comps the last time he went, but he was still like in a neighborhood of like $100 a night, and he was willing to swallow that. Like he's like, that's fine. But last he looked, it was somewhere between $250 $300 a night to stay at like Luxor, and
That's
it's
yeah,
like,
that's nuts.
yeah, and it's just like and so he was willing to like swallow that pill, and he's like, I guess I'll only go for like 2 nights or something. But we're like, no, like if we can move it, let's move it. And then I was talking to a couple of buddies, and they were talking about the table limits there and that. And like, last time when Gary and I went, we had $10 tables most of the morning into the early afternoon, early to mid afternoon, and like maybe around dinner time is when 15 started hitting us. And we were playing for so long that basically everywhere was fine grandfathering us in at ten
Right.
dollars for, we played, we probably played for about a half hour around like 4 p.m. At $10, and had multiple people coming up and complaining like, why these guys get to play for 10? It's like, yeah,
Oh,
they've
that's
been
the
here.
best. That's the
They've
best.
been here, and we were there. We probably played for like 3-4 hours probably at $10 crap. So, and we were also tipping the dealers, and so they, they were obviously taking care of us and shooing
Right.
people away.
Yeah.
So, um, but we like that. So we kind of want to keep the level of play around there and not have to deal with $25 minimums at
No.
mid lower tier properties or whatever. If I was somewhere, if I was at like maybe Circa or something, and that was the only option, like sure. If I was at like Bellagio or Caesar's Palace or like a nicer place, and like okay, like we're just gonna play for a little bit, sure, I'll play $25. I'll just play the pass line, play a real conservative, whatever. But yeah, so just all that, the expense, and we're like, you know what? No, let's just go. Let's just go a couple weeks before. One of our buddies, hopefully, is going to be able to make it on top of it. But if not, the three of us will have a good time. I am very curious to see what kind of trouble Caleb gets into. As that pretty man. I don't know what he's going to get into. We might not see him for days. I don't know.
Oh, he's one
Um,
of those people when he goes to Vegas, you see
no,
him at the airport and at check-in, and then you see him checking out.
No, but longstanding viewers of any on the wrong lead content, if you can look up the last on the wrong lead Vegas live stream, you could see the condition. Well, you can't see it because he's hidden behind the camera, but you can hear the condition that Caleb was in at about 5:30 p.m. Vegas time, and yeah. We'll see what happens when he's unleashed on the town, but
There's an event on in late June of this year that suddenly just became a lot more interesting.
we'll see. We'll see what happens. Um, but yeah. So if anyone's gonna be in town, I believe the dates are March 5th through the 9th is when we're planning on going. But if anyone happens to be in town that weekend, hit me up on Twitter, and maybe we'll grab a drink or something. But we do this every year, Andrew. Inexplicably, one year we got like 10,000 views or something, or listens to this episode. So I don't know if we hit some kind of weird algorithm or what, but let's see if we can strike lightning in a bottle again here. Um, we're going to talk about the Eclipse Awards. And Andrew, much to some people's chagrin, you are a voting member for the Eclipse Awards. And for those of you who don't know what it is, I'm sure most listeners do, but it's kind of like the Emmys, Oscars kind of thing. Voted on by members of the press. And I always find it funny. I always like going over this with you, Andrew, because I I realize like how, I don't know if it's how bad of a memory I have, or if it's just like there's a certain stuff that I just like don't care about, like as a better. Obviously, you've covered the sport professionally for a number of years,
Again,
um,
much to the chagrin of some people out there.
and like it's your job to know this stuff. It's your job, perhaps not to abstain from certain categories. Shout out to Ed DeRosa,
How many
but
did he abstain from this year?
I don't know. I
I
I
think it
just
was like it was at least five.
I only know about the steeplechase one, but and I just give him a hard time. I mean, I honestly like I could care less who's abstaining, who's not, but but I am not one to pass up taking a dig at my friend Ed. So, but I have your ballot up here. We'll go ahead and we will share it for the people here so they can take a look.
If you're watching it
Um,
on YouTube, you can see it. If you're not watching it on YouTube, go to the On the Wrong Lead YouTube channel, boot this up, cue the time code to about 14 minutes and 40 seconds, and you should be pretty well synced up. And while you're there, go on down below, hit the like button and hit that subscribe button. Really helps us out as far as being able to deliver content to you like this all year long. Josh, that's how you plug. Take notes.
I need a take notes button.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Um, I guess Andrew, before we get into the specifics on some of this stuff, I guess in general, I want to ask you, how hard do you feel like overall this year was for some of these categories compared to other years?
As far as picking winners of each category, not overly difficult. As far as stomaching what the level of success needed to be in order to win an Eclipse Award, incredibly hard. There are going to be several Eclipse divisions that have champions who have won one grade one race. I wish that wasn't the case, but that's the state of the game. And in past years, I have abstained from several categories for various different reasons. The year that Mr. Service and Mr. Navarro were rounded up, I abstained from a number of the human categories on the basis of we don't know who's clean and who isn't. I have abstained in the past from voting Godolphin in the owner and breeder categories because of certain things outside of the horse racing realm that the guy in charge of Godolphin is allegedly connected to. I did not do that this year solely because if Godolphin does not win champion owner and champion breeder, why even give the awards out? The statistics are just so far in their favor that it's fruitless to make what would be an attention-getting vote solely because of those factors. I couldn't bring myself to do that. A number of the categories this year were absolute locks. Torpedo Anna and 3-year-old filly, for instance, that should be unanimous. Citizen Bull is 2-year-old male. Immersive is 2-year-old filly. There were some categories that I've seen people's selections for that I'm a little bit perplexed by, but differences of opinion are natural. You're going to have hundreds of different ballots to count. Anybody's opinion at some point is going to be canceled out. And folks, no matter how much you disagree with someone's ballot, know that it is nowhere close to the worst ballot ever submitted in the history of the Eclipse Awards. Back in, I believe it was 2011, one voter voted Drosselmeyer champion turf horse. Drosselmeyer ran on turf once that year and was a distant 6th or 7th. No matter what ballot you see, your reaction cannot and or should not be revoke this person's ballot because I disagree with him or her. I detest that reaction. It is a popular vote. Sometimes someone's vote wins. Sometimes someone's vote loses. Either way, we accept the results with grace and we move on. We do not say revoke the ballot because I disagree with that person. If you're doing that, to anybody, I'm not just talking about somebody's ballot that we've already talked about. On a serious note, if you're doing that, stop doing that. It's incredibly immature. You gain no points. But going through the ballot as we do every year, Torpedo Anna should be horse of the year. I won't be unanimous. We know that, but Torpedo Anna should be horse of the year. Citizen Bull will be champion 2-year-old male. Immersive champion 2-year-old filly. 3-year-old male, you're going to get some differences of opinion on. I went with Sierra Leone solely because I asked myself, if you were an owner, which campaign would you want? Sierra Leone's or Fierceness? Look, Fierceness wins the Travers. He wins the Florida Derby. He wins the Jim Dandy. He's second in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Sierra Leone wins the Breeders' Cup Classic. Probably should have won the Kentucky Derby if not for the misbehavior in the stretch. Won the Bluegrass. I ultimately went with Sierra Leone, but I understand the people that voted for Fierceness first. I'm not going to strenuously disagree too much if it's Fierceness that winds up winning. Torpedo Anna should be a unanimous champion for 3-year-old filly. Older Dirt Male was an abomination this year, Josh. Spoiler alert. On this coming Friday, there will be an On the Wrong Lead live stream with awards, and one of the awards is the Command Performance Award for the most disappointing horse of the year. My ballot for that category included all handicap horses because I cannot remember a division that was this low quality across the board. I went with National Treasure in first. You win the Pegasus, you win the Met Mile, you come close to winning the California Crown, as it's called now. Most years, that's not enough to even get into the top three. This year, it's enough to probably win the award. My friend Joe Neville's voted next as champion older dirt male because of how dominant he was in the marathon division. I couldn't do that. I couldn't pull the trigger on it just because I can't vote a horse with no grade one victories. But I understand it because what else is there? There's just not a lot there in that division. For older dirt female, I went with Idiomatic. I can understand people voting Raging Sea or Adair Manor. Male sprinter, this is another one of those really bizarre things. Straight No Chaser probably wins the division off of the Breeders' Cup Sprint win. Mulligan probably had the most consistent campaign, but the one time he faced Straight No Chaser ate his lunch. Cogburn was my third choice. Turning for home in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, he looked like he couldn't lose. If he wins that race, he probably wins this category. For female sprinter, this was one of those categories where I wish we could have pulled a Tony Perkis and canceled it due to lack of hustle. This division was bad this year. It wasn't good. Soul of an Angel wound up getting my first place nod off of that upset win in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. But all you have to do is look at the resumes of horses in this category. It was not a good category this year. I'll be very interested in seeing what happened with male turf horse. I thought Rebels Romance was an absolute no-brainer. We will never see a campaign like this again of a horse that wins major Group 1 races on so many different continents against so many different groups of horses, comes over here, wins the Breeders' Cup Turf for a second time. I know that there are people rallying behind Johannes. I think there are even some people rallying behind Carl Spagler. Johannes won one Grade 1 race. If he wins the Breeders' Cup Mile, I can get behind him. I understand Rebels Romance only ran once stateside. To me, he's far and away the best male turf horse we saw in the States this year. And for that reason, he gets my nod there. He also gets my second choice as Horse of the Year. Female turf horse, Moira should win that. Cinderella's Dream and She Feels Pretty, both very talented 3-year-old fillies on the turf. Be very interested to see if they square off at some point next year. I think that'd be fun, going a 1 1/8, 1 1/4. You see She Feels Pretty after they put the blinkers on her, how good she got. And you see Cinderella's Dream, who came over several times and just always seemed to fire. Steeplechase horse, I have abstained from in the past. Last couple of years, I haven't, solely because I do not want my friends Carrie and Jess finding me and beating me up with a tire iron. Snap Decision, to me, this is his year. This is a horse that over the last several years has had a number of high points. He carried 160 some odd pounds to victory in the Jonathan Shepherd at Saratoga several years ago. I was there for that race. Cool horse. And this year he did enough to win the Eclipse Award, I think, and a bunch of other people think so too. Godolphin as owner and breeder is a lock. You see the statistics, they just dwarf everybody else. And any vote that I make in protest because of non-racing issues would be fruitless. At that point, if you're not giving it to Godolphin, don't give the award out. Flavian Pratt won champion jockey solely because of all of the graded stakes wins that he's had from coast to coast all year long. It's unfortunate that Brian Hernandez did not get a finalist nod because you win the Kentucky Derby, you win the Kentucky Oaks, you win the Breeders' Cup Distaff, you've had a hell of a year. And I wish that he would have gotten at least a finalist nod. He wasn't going to beat Flavian Pratt, but I wish he would have at least gotten a top 3 there. For apprentice jockey, I could have gone a number of different ways. We really didn't have a lot of data to go off of as voters. I went with J.G. Torrealba, who has done fairly well on the Mid-Atlantic circuit. Serafin Carmona has gotten a lot of mounts in a very competitive jockey colony in Southern California. I couldn't put Eric Asmussen higher than third solely because of how he gets a lot of his mounts. He's getting a lot of live horses for other reasons. He's turned into a decent rider. He's not a total anchor, but I can't well reward him when he's got that kind of an avenue to live horses. Now, as far as trainer goes, it's a matter of whose year you want. If you vote Ken McPeak, I'm not going to argue with you too much. I went with Chad Brown solely because the grade one successes that he's had all year, impossible to ignore. Brad Cox was my third choice there. And that's my ballot. It's not exactly an easy year as far as quality goes. It was a down year across a lot of different categories. I mean, all you have to do is look at the Breeders' Cup Classic, where 3-year-old males swept the try. But that's what I've got. My ballot's out there. It's public. I think it's the responsibility of every Eclipse Award voter to disclose their ballot at some point and defend their selections. That's what I'm doing here.
Oh, you're gonna defend so I can attack?
I mean, you usually do.
No, so obviously, you had already mentioned. Obviously, if you guys are listening or watching this, we're doing our live stream Friday, 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern. We're gonna do our own fun little awards. I mean, we're gonna talk about Horse of the Year. I think we also did Race of the Year. Some positive stuff, but you know, we also we like to have fun with our stuff. So we got some negative. You already mentioned the Command Performance Award and stuff like that. So well, we're gonna have fun with it. We were gonna play Turfway too, but like I said, we'll see if that actually runs. But um, yeah, Horse of the Year I think is pretty straightforward. And there's a couple of things. I think, like you said, the 2-year-old male and filly and the 3-year-old filly, very straightforward. Honestly, the the most interesting of these categories to me, I think, is the 3-year-old male. I think that's the most interesting. I think that's the real, I think, true coin flip of these of all the ones he kind of had here. Um, I'm on the like for all the crap I give you for picking these kinds of horses in the Derby, I I am actually see it the opposite of you. I see fierceness over Sierra Leone, um, but I just think I don't know. I think it's a consistency thing, but it's like you said, you're going for consistency versus who had the highest high, right? And obviously, winning the Breeders' Cup Classic as a 3-year-old is as high as it gets. I know we talk about the the Kentucky Derby, right, and the Travers and other 3-year-old only races, but I really think winning that winning the Breeders' Cup Classic, I mean that's outside of the Derby is the hardest race a 3-year-old can possibly win. And the Derby isn't a hard race necessarily because of the quality of the field, as much as it's also just the logistics of it. With having to navigate 20 horses and all the other stuff. So, um, yeah, I think it's interesting. We could probably sit here and talk all night. I think just about the argument there. Um, but it really wasn't until I pulled this up that I realized just how bad the handicap division is.
Right?
Because you mentioned you have National Treasure on here, obviously, and I was like, "What the hell did he win this year?" And then I remember, the Met Mile, and I'm like, he won the Met Mile, and it's just man, just a really, really tough year. And nothing against National Treasure. I mean, I think he was a fine horse. Like he ran decently enough as a 3-year-old. Um, he won the Preakness right as a 3-year-old,
Yep.
and came back and ran a couple nice races. But then he went to California to win a race that he probably had no business losing and lost. And it's just like man, like I don't know. It's tough. Um, but you start getting down to like the bottom part of your ballot, and that's really the part I feel like for me is where I get lost. Owner and breeder. I mean, outside of I couldn't name you a Godolphin owned horse off the top of my head right now. I literally I couldn't. I mean, the last one I could probably nail off the top of my head is probably Cody's Wish, right? He was the Dolphin owned, right?
I mean, Rebels Romance is Godolphin owned.
I no
Cinderella's
idea.
Dream, Godolphin owned.
Nope. No. See, I just don't retain that kind of information off the top of my head. Like I would need to actually do that type of research. Breeder, even more so. I mean, I don't know the sires for half these horses, let alone trying to figure out who bred the horse. So I mean, obviously that, like you said, like you'd have to do research, for that kind of stuff. But as someone who does this professionally, I mean, I'm sure you have all this information off the top of your head. Um, Apprentice jockey, I thought was an interesting one because I kind of felt the same way you did. They're just not. Usually, there's usually somebody that kind of pops out, at least even if it's only like a short stint. And like I'm thinking uh all the kind of the circuits I follow, and nothing really popped out at me. So um yeah, I thought that was an interesting one. Actually, I don't even know if this person is an apprentice. Is Sophia Vibe, is she an apprentice this year?
Yes, Joe Neville's actually voted her first for that. I'd have probably voted her
Yep.
fourth.
That's probably the person I would vote, um, just because of the eye test, not necessarily the stats. I mean, I like I said, I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but there's been some times, both at Woodbine and at Aqueduct recently, where I've just seen her ride and I'm like, she gets it, So, um, yeah, this is tough, right? And then like even like trainer, I feel like this year like I probably would have voted Kenny McPeak, um, but like it might just be because he's the one that's in my head the most. Like he's the one he's out in front. Once again, like Chad Brown, I mean, obviously Sierra Leone, and then Carl Spackler. We're kind of two of his big horses this year, and I mean, I think anyone would, for some
Chancer
training.
McPatrick too.
Oh yeah, Chancellor McPatrick, yeah. Um, so he's got a couple of really really nice horses that had really nice years this year, and he just does Chad Brown things at Saratoga. So, um, but yeah, I don't know. Like I feel like some of those might be tougher for me just because, like I said, off the top of my head, I mean, I'm not that guy. I need the form in front of me to know who trains, owns, rides, breeds, and all those other things in it. Um, but yeah, some of these, like you said, are really tough. Um, I mean, male sprinter. Uh, you know, when was the last time we had a male sprinter top three where we didn't have a Steve Asmussen horse that wasn't uh that or dirt Steve Asmussen horse? So,
Right.
um, like, yeah, I don't know. It's a weird year. And it's funny because I really do think with some of these categories, the Breeders' Cup just muddied the heck up on them. I think Society winning the Philly Mare Sprint would have, I think, cleared up that picture pretty easily. She had a very nice year and came up short. She ran a pretty good race, but obviously came up short there. I think, like you said, Cogburn. I think if he wins, he's got a say in that male sprinter. Um, maybe if an older dirt male wins the the Breeders' Cup Classic. I don't know. I don't know.
Forget wins the Breeders' Cup Classic, hits the board in the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Yeah, it's just, man, I don't know. This is yeah, I agreed with about of the stuff that I could very confidently speak about. I basically saw it the same way as you. I mean, obviously jockey Flavian Pratt. I mean, who else would it be? It's he had a year of years. So, um, yeah, I got nothing, Andrew. I wanted to poke more holes at it. Like I said, the big one that I think we could probably come to blows to, and I don't really know if we would because I think you kind of agree it was a bit of a coin flip a little bit is the 3-year-old male, and it's just like,
Exactly. I mean, if somebody is devout in saying, here's why fierceness should win the award, okay, I'm not going to strenuously disagree. And in fact, if it winds up being a tie between Sierra Leone and fierceness, I'll be okay with that. Um, it's just one of those instances where you can't vote for a tie. You have to pick one. I went with the horse that won the Breeders' Cup Classic. That's all there is to it. And if somebody feels strongly the other direction, okay, I'm not going to come to blows with somebody based off of that. This isn't like the situation several years ago where people were actively looking for a reason not to vote Epicenter as champion 3-year-old male because he only won one grade 1 race. And I just went, wait a minute. He runs second a couple of times in some really big races. He wins a whole bunch of grade 2s. And you're telling me all that stuff doesn't matter? No. I mean, this also isn't the situation with Justify and Accelerate, where people tried to elevate Accelerate into the horse of the year conversation when Justify was an undefeated Triple Crown winner. And that, by the way, is something that makes some people's heads explode because they think I'm an anti-Bob Baffert hater and want him burned at the stake. And that's not the case. And that's an example of, one of the reasons why. So, no, I don't think there's anything worth getting into a knockdown, drag-out fight over with the Eclipse Awards this year, at least on the horse side. So, we'll see what happens. I know that's coming up in a couple of weeks, and hopefully everybody out there enjoyed me going through my ballot and discussing my reasoning a little bit.
Yeah. But we're gonna kind of ease back into this this whole podcasting thing. I mean, dude, I feel so rusty, and obviously, a production meeting during or a little peek behind the scenes, having some equipment issues. So trying to figure that stuff out and get all this going, man. I can't take 3 weeks off, 3 weeks off anymore. Like it's just like I feel like I've never done this before after that much time off. So
Can I try to work the storytelling muscles before we bid the fine people adieu for the week?
absolutely.
Josh, I don't even think you know the full extent of this story. So 2024 did not end quietly for yours truly for a couple of different reasons, one of which I'm going to go into here. So my dad's out here for Breeders' Cup week. This is about 2 months ago. We're driving back from Pleasanton in my 2016 Nissan Altima. The check engine light comes on. Get home, car's running fine. I go to O'Reilly Auto Parts the next day, and I learn about how horrible Nissan transmissions are.
Mm-hmm.
My car's at 95,000 miles, transmission's on its last legs. I do a transmission service with my local mechanic who did everything he could. That bought me some time, but ultimately the check engine light came back on. Wound up needing to buy a newer to me car. I go up to Vallejo, California, to the Hyundai dealership up there, and I wind up signing a contract for a 2021 Hyundai Sonata Limited. So all the bells and whistles, 25,000 miles on it. Whoever had it before had a lease and just babied the hell out of it. Really liked that car. Josh, I'm going to tell you a sentence that gets worse as it goes along. Are you ready for this one?
Mm-hmm.
I got rear-ended on the Bay Bridge between Oakland and San Francisco on my birthday by an uninsured, possibly unlicensed driver, and the car got totaled. Tell me that sentence doesn't get worse as it goes along, right?
That's pretty bad.
Yeah. So it was stop and go traffic. I stopped. Guy behind me did not. Was a Mercedes-Benz SUV that hit me at about 20 miles an hour. And as it turns out, altered the floor of the car. Yeah. So body shop took a little while to figure out what was going on, but it was totaled. So they are now in the process of trying to nail this guy, which I am actively hoping they do. I go east for my holiday weekend. I come back and I wind up getting a rental car for a couple of days on Christmas Eve because my fiance and I have our Christmas plans and I've got things I've got to do. So I go to Budget Rent-A-Car in Walnut Creek, California, and I made a reservation for the mystery car option. For those who are uninitiated, that's a really cheap rate where they basically get to stuff you into whatever car they want. Well, I got there 15 minutes before they closed on Christmas Eve. And this poor woman behind the counter who did not want to be there goes, "Okay, what car do you want?" I went, "Really?" "Yeah, what do you want? We got a whole bunch of them." I look out and I go, "How about that Genesis out there?" It's a fully loaded 2023 Genesis S80 luxury car that I got for economy car pricing for 4 or 5 days. So that wasn't half bad. But I just recently bought a 2023 Hyundai Sonata SEL Plus. So about 90% of the features of the Limited. And hopefully my car saga is over. But that was 6 weeks to 2 months of my life that I will never get back. Not a lot of fun. I do not recommend getting rear-ended on the Bay Bridge on your birthday by an uninsured, possibly unlicensed driver to where the car winds up getting totaled. Life advice for you.
And that's going to do it for us here. Obviously, check us out at onthewronglead.com, at wrong_lead on Twitter. He is at Andrew Champagne, winnersandwhiners.com, all other places. Catch him on the Hong Kong feed. I am at Cherry Drank. Catch us Friday night, 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern, as we do our end of year On the Wrong Lead Awards. Very prestigious, very, very big deal. And Andrew, I know you're going to have, I already know what I'm going to have you do. So we'll discuss after the
Looking forward to it. Suit and tie, right?